For some form of a technical function within their business. This is the challenge of making visible what is in your ERP system out to your customer. So we have specific customer accounts, we have specific pricing, we have specific deals, we have specific rebates that are all stored in this huge ERP system, and then you're expecting your customer to come in and be able to have that exact same experience online versus them calling in and a customer service people being able to dive into their account and provide them with pricing there and then and processing an order. So how do we do that? And that's what Daniel is going to take us through now.
Thank you. Hi everyone. Okay, so topic of today, architecting your B2B platform for scale and growth. So Mark has demonstrated Magento and now some of the B2B features of Magento 2 that come out of the box. So based on a platform, the job that we have as a solution implementer is to map a business requirement that you all have to the core functionality. Out of the box, Magento is very scalable, but when we start bringing your data in and when we start modifying and customizing, that's then when key decisions need to be made. So I'm Daniel Walsh, I'm the Project Delivery Manager at Monsoon Consulting. I'm a recovering Magento developer. I'm now in the delivery business. Certified Magento Solution Specialist, so I'd be involved throughout a project in ensuring that the architecture is correct based on business analysis, is scalable for the future. So a brief overview of what I'm going to touch on. I'm going to look at the characteristics of B2B, so the space that we're in at the moment, and how Magento as a core platform can go most of the way in meeting those requirements. Architecture in this context is all about integrations. So I'll go through some integration examples. I'll talk a little bit about data in those integration examples. Then I'll give specific examples around inventory and pricing and examples of how you could integrate inventory and pricing and the questions around that. And then I'll finish up with how to scale the platform once it's built, how to grow it, and some of the do's and don'ts based on our experience in implementing these types of implementations. Okay, B2B. Characteristics of B2B. Alphabet soup is probably the best way to describe it, or acronym bingo. We have ERPs, WMSs, POSs, OMSs. There's a wide variety of back-end systems like resource planning, warehouse management, point of sale, order management, product information systems, customer relationship management systems. If you have dotmailer, marketing automation systems. So there's just huge volumes of data that are at your fingertips. And the trick with B2B is while your businesses are very complex, it needs to be very simple to the user. And that's the architectural challenge. So this will strike chords with some of you guys in the room. Complex pricing on contracts. If you're using SAP, SAP is all about having very complex contracts, contractuals and pricing, and how to replicate that online. Complex inventory, you might have multiple warehouses, multiple distribution centers, maybe even multiple operating companies. And then a complex routing system to distribute and fulfill. Might have very specific cutoffs around products. If you want it delivered by tomorrow, it has to be order placed by 12 noon today. A lot of complexity around customer structures as well. So chains of customers and of companies and hierarchies with users and different types of permissions. Normally, e-commerce is one channel. You will usually have multiple order entry points. So fax is still widely used. Email, telesales, usually large telesales teams. You might have your own proprietary systems that you've sent out to each of your customers that they directly place orders on. So e-commerce is just one of those. credit card payments isn't regular in B2B online, so it's usually account-based, credit-based. Pay every 30 days via direct debit. And as Steve mentioned, large teams of sales reps on the road that you need to figure out how to win over. Customers require extensive financial documentation, so they want copies of invoices, credit notes, rebates, statements, and you probably have large teams of customer services answering all these queries. And a lot of some B2B companies do have existing e-commerce sites. So from an architecture perspective, you need to understand how the migration from an existing system to a new system is going to work. So where's the future of B2B? B2B e-commerce will be a full window into your brand. Customers will see that as a one-stop shop for everything from replenishing, from ordering, from searching the catalog to find new and interesting products, potentially requesting quotes, and then have a requisition list to draw down the items from that quote. As I mentioned, accessing financial documents, potentially accessing support via some sort of live chat or web chat. So to achieve all that, you need to leverage all of the data and logic that you have in your back-end systems, and this is where the architecture starts kicking in. And as I mentioned, e-commerce for B2B is part of an omni-channel solution. So customers need to have consistency across all the various channels. So there's no point the customer going online, seeing a price, then not trusting the price, ringing up telesales, and they get a better price off telesales. Because then they'll never go online, they'll just keep ringing telesales. So there needs to be consistency across channels, so then they can have trust across the various channels. So Magento for B2B. All of our implementations to date have been on Magento 1, and as Mark said, it's incredibly flexible and open source, which means that we have been able to use Magento 1 and build on top of that for B2B. We're now in the era of Magento 2, and as Mark said, the B2B module is going to be released in H1 of next year. So again, part of the job that we would have in analyzing your business and creating an architecture is to map all of the functionality that you require to Magento. So in Magento, you have core functionality. There's a catalog function, so we'll map your catalog to the Magento catalog. Once you run out of core functionality and you still have requirements, then you need to look either into the marketplace to see what contributed functionality there is that you can purchase at a cost, or what custom functionality do you need to develop to achieve the requirement. So it's effectively a mapping process that we go through, and we make key decisions along the way. So typical B2B functionality, I won't dwell on this too much, but effectively everything here, which your customers and your users need to achieve online, most of this can be mapped from your back-end systems. So catalog, shared catalogs, having particular inventory, maybe inventory pools or inventory groups, customized pricing based on users, having customers, they have addresses, there might be sold tos or shipped tos or multiples of that, users and roles, promotions, catalog visibility. You might have 100,000 SKUs in your catalog, but this customer might only have access to 1,000 of those or subsets of those. Wish list favorites functionality is crucial in B2B because you need fast checkout process. So if you're comparing what users are currently doing, they're ringing telesales and placing an order within 30 seconds. And they're doing that maybe once or twice a day. So they need to be able to replicate that speed online because they're busy people. And the way they do that is by having curated favorites lists, by having product recommendations, and by making sure that your site is responsive and fast. Powerful search, so that they're not spending a lot of time going through a category structure. Reporting, order workflow is an interesting one because Magento has a full workflow system built in, and sometimes it makes sense to map that from your system to Magento, and other times it doesn't. So the Uniphar example is interesting because they have an insane distribution network. So if you place an order in the morning, you'll get it a few hours later. So there's very little point in trying to replicate, where is it in the process, because by the time they log in, it'll be at the door. So it's more about value. Where's the value in doing that? And there just wasn't value in doing it there. Quick orders, as I mentioned, and a quotation process. So what type of backend systems can Magento integrate with? So Magento can integrate with any system that you can pull data from. So either through flat files or via APIs or web services. So Magento is the biggest platform in e-commerce. So there's lots of experience across the sectors in small to medium-sized businesses, mid-market and enterprise, all the way up to full-blown SAP integrations or implementations. So there's a huge track record of integrating with complex ERP systems, and as Volkswagen, Burger King as great examples of that. So you're in a situation now where you have all this data, and how do you get it out of your systems and into Magento and syncing it with Magento? So as I mentioned, you have files. You can export data from your systems and import it into Magento, or you could have web services or APIs that you can request and respond based on certain events. So there's three types, and the first example is an integration bridge. So an integration bridge is effectively a mixture of flat files and APIs, but the difference is it's provided for by an external party. So there are SAP connectors out there. There's Microsoft Dynamics connectors, NetSuite connectors, and these would fit in the contributed module side of the build. And what that actually means in reality then is you download the connector, you would install it on the Magento side, and then you would also install it on your ERP side. And because it's pre-cooked, with a bit of mapping using an interface here, it'll just start working, or so it's told. So there are problems with that. And again, it really depends on the complexity of your business. So if your business is not as complex as a Volkswagen or a Uniphar, this might be a perfect solution. So again, pros are initial costs are less than building this from scratch. There's no need to create the interfaces or schedule the file extracts. And again, it might make sense for your business. The cons are, it's first of all, you're dealing with a third party. So if it's not a solution integrator, it's not Magento, it's going to be some company who's built this connector, and they likely have Magento and ERP experience. So there might be ongoing license costs for that. There will be an upfront cost for it as well. But the main issue is that they might be difficult to extend. They might not be open source. So it's potentially they might be the only vendor you could go to actually get an extension of that application code. So it can be costly then as a result of that. The fact that half of the bridge is sitting in your local ERP pool is a problem. Because if you want to upgrade your ERP, well, is the app compatible with your new version of SAP or Dynamics? Or do you need to buy the upgrade off them and then go through an entire regression testing process? So a lot of companies aren't happy to have any external functionality sitting within their local system. And then cons, performance is a consideration as well. So we've seen some connectors where they don't use flat files and they only use web services. And there was an example where the company that we were dealing with regularly have bulk updates to the product catalog. So they might update 20 or 30,000 SKUs in one go. And because of this bridge, it would have resulted in 20 or 30,000 different simultaneous requests to the ERP system to update the products, which would have resulted in devastation, I'm sure. So there can be performance considerations if you don't understand how the bridge has been built. But again, it does make sense for certain companies. Flat file, so CSV, XML. This is a little bit more old school, but still very relevant. You have a full catalog in your product information system. You need to get it into Magento. So you run an extract every night and send it to Magento, and Magento consumes it and updates as a result. So this works very well for certain types of data, and the catalog is a perfect example. If you have 1 million SKUs, you're not going to want to do that via web services, nor will you want to send over those million records every night. So you need to decide from a performance perspective how best to keep data in sync between systems. Orders, you wouldn't normally use flat files to send orders because web services are better because it's on demand and it's real time. But again, depends on what back-end systems you have. If you have a custom system that doesn't have web services, then you can always revert to flat files. So again, the pro to using flat files, you have full flexibility now. So a lot of ERP systems have very flexible reporting systems where you can create a structure using an interface and then schedule the extracts without any development. So a lot of ERP systems, it's easy to do this. You have full control over the architecture. You can choose what attributes for a product you want to download, send to e-commerce, and which ones you don't, because it's just not relevant. And there's huge performance benefits to this. So again, the million product example, you can, if you're using flat files, you can inject that directly into the database at night into Magento. That's a lot more performant than trying to run that over web services. So the cons to this, the data is not real time, and that's the biggest problem. So it's a snapshot of when you extracted it. So if it's stock and you're extracting stock every hour, then the stock actually might run out throughout that hour, and then you start overselling or shorting. And that, obviously there's development required to consume the file and archive it, etc. So the final way for integration is web services. So Magento comes with a suite of SOAP and REST web services and particularly in Magento 2 now, it's for the vast majority of the system can be accessible via web services. So even out of the box, you could build code in your ERP system to request data from one of those web services or send a ping to one of those web services to create an order, create a customer, update something. And Magento will send the response to say that has been successful or it hasn't. And vice versa, ERP systems usually come out of the box with either a suite of web services or APIs, or it's relatively straightforward to actually create some. So this is the future, but flat files still have a solid place in integrations and in architecture. So again, the pro to this, full flexibility, because you're potentially creating the web services on either side. The web services are real time. So if you receive an order on Magento, you send the order straight through to the ERP system, and then that's in the system straight away, and you can distribute it or fulfill it. And vice versa, if you were requesting pricing, for example, from your ERP system, it's likely going to be the most up-to-date price or the most up-to-date stock. So when thinking about the flow of data, a few considerations. What's the direction is an obvious one. So is Magento fetching it from the third-party system or vice versa? What's the trigger? So again, the example of if you're creating an order, the trigger is the creation of an order, and then that sends the order through to the ERP system. And I mentioned the data set. Is it a full data set of 1 million records, or are you only sending just the changes that took place over the last 24 hours since you previously sent the file? So decisions on data. Architecturally, the biggest decision for each type of data is what's the source of truth. If you're maintaining inventory and inventory levels in your ERP system, you don't want to also then have to maintain that in Magento manually. So in that instance, all of the data is in the ERP. extract it out into Magento, and it's just synced automatically, and you're never really updating Magento manually for inventory. Same with product information. If you have a product information management system, which contains all of the images and descriptions, you don't want to then also have to update it in Magento. So by having an integration, you only want one source of truth for all the different types of data. And promotions is an interesting one because a lot of ERP systems struggle to run complex promotions, yet Magento has an amazing promotions engine. So the source of truth for promotions could be Magento, and you just pass through the order discount to the ERP system. Bad data is a big problem that everyone needs to come to terms with. So you all have horrible data in your systems, and the minute you extract out a master data file of all your products in a catalog, you'll realize that there's products there that you haven't sold for about 30 years, or that have been obsolete, or whatever the case is. So from that perspective, you might need to build logic to filter out bad data. And we would always recommend that you implement that logic wherever the source of truth is. So if the catalog is in your ERP, don't implement that logic in Magento. Implement it in your ERP, so then if you're using other channels, they're getting an accurate record of it. Data persistence. Magento is a standalone system. So by importing all of this data, if the bridge goes down or the connection goes down to your ERP system, you still have the potential to take orders. And then you could just push through the orders when your ERP connection comes back up again. So the fact that you're persisting data in Magento is a good thing. I want to talk a bit about accuracy versus performance, and it's architecturally this is a decision that needs to be made where there's large complexity. So if there's huge complexity around pricing, and your customers demand an accurate price every time they go onto the site, that might be to the detriment of performance. Either because you need to query your ERP system and that needs to do some thinking to figure it out, or you're replicating some of the logic in Magento and then Magento needs to figure it out. So there's a constant battle between the accuracy of data versus the performance of the system. And it's worth taking that into account for all the different types of data coming through. So I'll go through two integration examples, and this really depends on the types of businesses that you have, and particularly the layout of warehouses as well. So we've implemented inventory using flat files, which is, we import stock every hour, and that can either be the entire stock file or it can just be the changes that occurred over the last hour. And even with flat file based integration, you could also import the average sales of the products. So you could compare what you have in stock versus what's the average sale of that stock to see, is it limited stock or is it in stock? And Magento now has multi-location inventory management, I think in 2.1, but there's already advanced inventory management in Magento. That's one way you could go. Second way you could go is via web services. So Magento could fetch on every page load. Magento could fetch an accurate stock for that customer location based on whatever warehouse they're going to be fulfilled from, and then that could be rendered on every single page. So you then have much greater accuracy because your ERP system knows intimately how much stock is there for that customer. Magento would have to figure that out, or it might be an old, stale version. And with that, you could even take allocations into account. So in certain businesses, you might have 1,000 units, but 500 might be allocated to this special customer, and the rest is distributed amongst the not so special customers. So to try to replicate that in Magento might not make sense. And the more complex that goes, the more you'd need to keep replicating in Magento. So eventually it might make sense not to do any of that and simply have a web service, and then you achieve abstraction. And what that means is Magento, all it needs to know is what's the number of stock for that customer. It doesn't need to know anything about the underlying logic. And again, downside of that might be performance, because it might take your system a while to figure that out. Pricing is always fascinating in B2B. there is any amount of types of prices. So we've come across trade prices, net prices, contract prices, case prices, unit prices, special prices, best prices. So it doesn't appear that B2B companies have a single price for a customer. And that's, again, dependent on the nature of the business. So where there's large complexity, we would usually revert to web services, specifically because, again, in SAP, there might be enormous logic around rendering a price. And if it needs to be an accurate price, you would definitely go via web services. If it doesn't need to be an accurate price, or your pricing isn't that complex, then it makes sense to import the prices on a regular basis. And that might be importing the price conditions into the B2B module, or it might be, importing the price, the index of prices. So there's always large conversations around pricing, and it's a key part of the architecture, because if you consider on every page of the catalog, you're going to have 20 or 30 products. If you're running web services on every page, then that's usually one call with 30 SKUs. And then if you have 100 users on the site at the same time, then you could have huge load. And obviously you don't want negative performance on your back-end systems. So pricing is one of the key parts of the architecture that needs to be cracked. Scalability. Scalability is about how the system can accommodate growth. And I'm going to cover two areas. The first one is the application. So all of the conversations around integrations impact the scalability. So again, the examples of if you're using web services and you have 30 products with 100 users, that could be a huge amount of requests to your backend system. That might work for 100 users, but if you're coming up to Christmas and there's a cutoff and you have 1,000 users on the site, then that might not work. You might have performance impacts, or worst case scenario, it brings down your entire backend system. So the architecture, application architecture, is all about how you've created the integrations and are the integrations scalable. So it's on both sides then as well. So it's both Magento needs to be able to render a page and render data, and your backend ERP system, if you're using web services, also needs to do the same. Build-in redundancy. So like I mentioned, if your backend ERP system or the connection goes down, you can still take orders on Magento. You have redundancy there, and you're able to push those through, so you're not losing orders. And automated test coverage. As the system scales, as you keep adding new features, you want to have confidence, and you need to be able to verify that everything is still operating as it should be. From a server perspective, Mark mentioned that there's now Magento Cloud, but no matter what the business is, uptime is going to be critical. So in Magento Cloud, you have elastic resources. And what that means is as load increases on your site, as traffic increases, additional web servers or web nodes are spun up to accommodate the growth. And then it reduces then as traffic decreases. So not just on Magento Cloud, like AWS have this, but if you're hosting internally, you need to consider the peaks and troughs of business. And you need to build a server architecture that can accommodate the highest peaks. High availability is crucial, so you need failover. If your database node goes down, it has to be able to fail over to another node, otherwise you're going to have an outage. So standard practice in our server architectures would be that you would always have a slave server that can fail over in emergencies. AWS, Amazon Web Services, have multiple availability zones. So what that means is you could have, if you have a global system, or you want increased redundancy, you could have your site hosted in 2 data centers. So if the Amsterdam data center goes down, then the Paris data center will still maintain service. Caching is an area that absolutely can't be overlooked. So you need a caching strategy, and what I mean by that is, if you have large traffic, but they're not potentially placing orders, they might be placing too much. The anonymous users might be placing too much load on your site to the detriment of the people actually trying to place an order. So you could have aggressive caching and serve effectively just flat files, snapshots of how the site looked to anonymous traffic, and keep all the processing power for people placing orders and in checkout. Magento 2 has the ability to have multiple databases now. So you can have a database for the admin, you can have a database for the checkout, and you can have a database for the rest of the site. So there's a lot of strategy around caching. And you can even cache responses from web services as well, or from API calls. Things to consider around scalability. Obviously, security is crucial. And secure communications. So again, if you're integrating with your backend systems, is it over a VPN? Is it using secure file transfer, etc. And whatever the solution is has to be able to scale as well. So growth. So you built your site. It's scalable, so can handle extra traffic. So now you need the extra traffic. So ways that B2B is growing. Self-service is a huge area now in B2B. So traditionally, online ordering portals or B2B applications have peaks and troughs of traffic. So a peak as it approaches cutoff time, everyone places an order, and then it just dies until the next cutoff approaches and it spikes again. Self-service will standardize that traffic profile because users will be on the site all of the time, maybe accessing customer service, downloading invoices or credit notes or statements, checking their balance, checking when their next payment date is due. And this, as I mentioned at the start of the deck, it'll become a one-stop shop for customers to your brand. You can get a bit creative on the catalog, and you can start gamifying some of the experience. So loyalty is a great example of achieving gamification. You can have points-based rewards. If you buy a subset of products, then they're going to have double points or triple points. And in the My Account section, the user might be able to see what the total points is for over the last month. And if they hit 1,000 points, then the reward is, depending on how much they're worth to you, a trip to the Caribbean, or I don't know. But if you're in a highly competitive industry, this makes total sense, because if there's no loyalty for your customer and they see a price here, they'll just say, no, I'll just go to the competitor. If you have a loyalty scheme, they might think twice about that because they might think about the reward that's coming. Rebate schemes. You could have rebate schemes on kind of a subset of products, so that if they purchase more of a type of product over the course of a month, then you can deduct their bill by an increasing percentage. And you can get quite graphic in the likes of a My Account area with this. And finally, personalization. So predictive content is now huge. I mentioned the 30 seconds that someone places an order on the telephone. So if by logging in, they can see the products that they need, that's in their heads to order, recommended products, that might be all they need. So add to cart, straight through checkout, and within 30 seconds, they're back doing whatever they were doing. Magento comes with advanced customer segmentation and targeting. So based on the customers that are in the system, you can get very granular as to targeting customers from a location that have placed an order in the last 30 days that contained this product. And based on that, then you can offer particular banners in key areas of the site. And finally, personalized deals. As opposed to blanket deals, the ability to be able to granularly get down into maybe different customer segments and offer specific deals to customers or customer groups. So finally, do's and don'ts. From our experience, it's crucial to create an automated test suite, particularly if you're going to iterate on releases. So if you want to take a narrow integration to start with and then build another one, you don't want to go through endless regression tests. So having large test coverage is crucial. Tackle the area of greatest technical risk first. So if there's a big unknown in SAP or in Dynamics, or there's a big unknown in pricing, that as a business you might understand what it's achieving, but you might not understand technically how it works, then dive headfirst into that, because that could have a big impact down the road if you tackle it too late. Allow lots of time for testing with real data, so don't leave that to the last week. Get that in as early as possible. Even if it's just a draft data set, it's still good to get it in just to see what shape it's taken. Engage early with engineers. So again, from a functional perspective, you might understand how pricing works. But if an SAP engineer was diving in, they might understand that there's contracts and there's pricing and then there's commercial setting, different pricing, and there might be a lot more complexity than that meets the eye. Allow flexibility, be agile. And don't eat the elephant in one sitting. So B2B is complex. There's going to be big systems, and the key is not to try to tackle it all in one go and take it piece by piece. And from a first version, get that in front of customers and get feedback. We make a lot of assumptions in businesses on what our customers want, but by actually getting feedback from customers, it can be telling. And finally, don't try to replicate your ERP system in Magento. So at a certain point, if it looks like it's way too complex to integrate a certain type of data, then take a step back and see, is there an easier way to do this? Is there value in replicating, or is it easier to do a web service call and work it from there? Okay, that's me. I hope that was an insight into taking Magento as a core platform and taking a requirement and trying to develop an architecture that gets the two working and into production in front of your customers. Any questions? No t-shirts, so okay. All right, thank you.